So the reason why I blend both L'Homme Idéal Parfum is actually really simple. I absolutely love that sort of a signature L'Homme Idéal almond scent. I also think that the line overall is definitely among some of the most unique designer lines ever made. Absolutely no idea why L'Homme Idéal Parfum was so hard to find, but I finally bought it, so let's see. Okay, definitely that sort of a signature almond. Up in there, this opens up quite busy, and pretty much right away I'm getting that sort of a signature L'Homme Idéal note, but it feels a bit sort of a deeper, and right away this is kind of creamy and also sort of a boozy. So let's try on skin. Okay, slightly different, but pretty much the same experience on skin. This opens up with that signature almond note. It's a bit sweet in the opening, and I also find it to be extremely sort of a creamy and smooth, and also a bit boozy. And pretty much right away, my first thought was that of the extreme. So the notes in L'Homme Idéal Parfum are amaretto, musk, leather and patchouli, and I do feel that the opening is pretty much dominated by that amaretto with almond and fruity sweetness. So like 5 minutes into it, this still has a prominent dose of that amaretto. So this is still quite intensely almondy together with a bit of fruitiness and a bit of sweetness. However, the mids is really where the leather starts to push through. So L'Homme Idéal Parfum in the mids, at least on my skin and at least based on this first impression, turns into this creamy almond leather mix that's boozy, fruity and a bit sweet. The leather almost has sort of a smoky undertones, really subtle though, and I do feel that the leather in L'Homme Idéal Parfum is quite a creamy and smooth one. Now there's a bit of leather in all of the other ones, but at least based on my first impressions of the parfum, I do feel that the leather in it is more prominent and more intense than these. But comparing it with fragrances like Tom Ford Tuscan leather or ombre leather, I definitely do not think this is as sort of a raw or smoky. This is definitely quite a creamy and smooth kind of leather. So L'Homme Idéal Parfum in the dry down, at least on my skin, feels like it's mostly focused on the fruity side of it together with that leather. And there's a super soft woody side to it. And I do feel that there's a slightly super subtle kind of smokiness to the leather. The whole thing is super creamy. You have that sort of a smoothness that you can find across the range. So primarily like a fruity, leathery and almond scent. And like quickly comparing it with the other ones, let me know by the way if I should do a proper comparison of all my L'Homme Idéals. I do have a L'Homme Idéal comparison video. I'm gonna link to it above, so make sure you check it out. However, there are some new fragrances that are not in that video. However, the leather in the new parfum definitely feels like the sort of the strongest ones if I compare it with the leather in the others. The fruitiness of L'Homme Idéal Parfum definitely feels among the sort of the strongest ones. However, I don't feel it's as strong and as sweet as the extreme. So the extreme is definitely more fruity and sweet, whereas the fruitiness of the parfum, it's definitely prominent, but there's a sort of a softness to it, whereas I do feel the fruity side of the extreme pops more. So based on my first impressions of the parfum, I do feel that the parfum is sort of built around the extreme, but with the leather pushed more intensely and with a more prominent dose of that sort of a signature almond. It definitely goes in a different way compared to the Lantons. I do feel there are some similarities to the Eau de Toilette, but again, this one pushes the almond in a more fruity direction with a more prominent dose of leather. And even though the parfum and the Eau de Parfum are built around the same sort of a signature L'Homme Idéal almond, I do feel that the parfum pushes that almond in a slightly different way, and the parfum is definitely a lot more leather focused with a different kind of sweetness and fruitiness. So when it comes to the vibe of L'Homme Idéal Parfum, I do feel that it sort of, in a way, retains a bit of the sexiness from the Extreme and the Eau de Parfum, but I don't feel this is as sexy as those two. And this instead leans into something that I feel is a bit more mature and also at the same time a bit more classy and elegant. That prominent, creamy, smooth leather together with that rich, boozy almond definitely takes this in a more elegant and classy direction. When it comes to compliments and mass appeal, I do feel that L'Homme Idéal Parfum is quite a likable men's fragrance. However, I do not feel it's as mass appealing as the Extreme. I don't feel it's as mass appealing as the Eau de Parfum and the Eau de Toilette. It definitely has a higher likability factor to it though, if you compare it to the Lantons. I've said it before, if you want to blend in, then this line is definitely not for you. That unique almond definitely makes you stand out. When it comes to performance, I really gotta wear it more, but I do feel, based on my first impressions of it and how it sort of lingers in the air around me and how it oozes from my skin, that this is nowhere near beast mode. None of these in the line, including the new Parfum, are anywhere near beast mode. But with that said, it definitely feels like the Parfum is at least a little bit stronger than the Eau de Toilette and the Eau de Parfum. I could be wrong, this is just based on my first impressions of it. I would love to know, if you have it, what kind of performance you're getting from it. When it comes to usage, so like seasons and occasions, I do feel that L'Homme Idéal Parfum leans more towards fall, winter and spring. You might be able to pull it off on summer nights, however the almond note of the L'Homme Idéals behaves so differently depending on how warm it is, so I do recommend trying it out and see how it develops on your skin. The almond note sometimes develops absolutely beautifully with a bit of warmth, and sometimes I do find it to be a bit cloying in warm weather. This kind of scent though is definitely not my first choice on a super warm day. When it comes to occasions, its elegant and classy vibes definitely makes it a great choice for special occasions, formal occasions, or when you want to stand out when you're going on a date or when you're going out with that unique almond scent. So who's L'Homme Idéal Parfum for? I think that the sort of a baseline here that you should ask yourself is, do I like the sort of a signature almond note? Do you usually enjoy the scent of almond? If the answer to that question is yes, then you might enjoy this. Do you enjoy the scent of leather? Then you might enjoy this. But again, the leather in here is of the, at least to my nose, quite creamy and smooth kind. And it's definitely not the same kind of leather if you compare it to the leather in fragrances like Tuscan leather or amber leather. And do you enjoy a bit of fruitiness in fragrances? If the answer is yes to all of those, sort of, then you might enjoy this. Stay away if you already know that you don't enjoy the scent of almond or that you don't enjoy the others in the line. If you're a big fan of the Extreme, then you will most likely enjoy the Parfum. But again, the Parfum is more leathery with a different kind of fruitiness to it, and I don't feel it's as fruity sweet as the Extreme. So is L'Homme Idéal Parfum redundant if you already own the others? I think it really depends on how much you love this sort of a DNA. If you absolutely love it, if you are obsessed with it and want a lot of different variations of it, then yeah, the Parfum is not redundant. However, I do feel that if you already have the Extreme, then the Parfum is most likely redundant. So what are some other alternatives to L'Homme Idéal Parfum? I do feel that this line overall and the Parfum has quite a bit of uniqueness to it thanks to that sort of a signature L'Homme Idéal almond. So I do feel that most of the alternatives can be found within the line, and I do feel that it has most similarities to the Extreme. The Extreme, to my nose, is more fruity, more sweet with a slightly different kind of fruitiness. It also has a bit of tobacco to it, a soft, slightly warm dose of tobacco. It also has leather, but I do find the leather in the Extreme to be a less intense one. For a sexy dose of sweet vanilla together with that sort of signature L'Homme Idéal almond and a dose of cherry, there's the Eau de Parfum. The original to me is definitely the most sort of a balanced one, and to me it's a mix of freshness, so that signature almond together with vanilla and woodiness. Now the Lantons takes things in a more intensely spicy and sort of a smoky direction, which definitely makes this the sort of a least mass appealing, almost sort of a least versatile of them all. If we take a look outside the L'Homme Idéal line, I gotta mention Parfums de Marly Pegasus. That's a fantastic mix of vanilla and almond, and it's a bit powdery and softly woody. Pegasus is one of my fragrances for life. I absolutely love it, and I do find Pegasus to be a fantastic fragrance when you want something quite different on you. That's definitely a head turner. I know some people absolutely hate Pegasus, but I do love it. When it comes to price, I paid about 100 bucks for L'Homme Idéal Parfum, which makes this slightly more expensive if you compare it to the other ones, which you usually can find on discounters from around 80 to 90 bucks for 100 ml. What are my final thoughts on L'Homme Idéal Parfum based on my first impressions of it? This is definitely another L'Homme Idéal that I feel is extremely well made. However, and this is coming from someone who's a leather freak. I absolutely love the scent of leather. I do enjoy the more intense leather in the parfum, and I do like the sort of a new twist on that signature almond in the newer parfum. However, I just sprayed to confirm the extreme, and some of the other ones have more layers to them. So in a way, I do think that some of the other ones are more exciting and more nuanced, whereas this pretty much focuses quite heavily on that signature almond that's a bit different. It goes in a richer and a different kind of fruity direction together with a more prominent dose of leather. So when this dries down, I really like it, but I also feel in a way that some of the other ones are more exciting in the dry down. So L'Homme Idéal Parfum smells really good. I mean, I absolutely love that sort of a signature almond note. However, I do think, based on my first impressions of it, that I enjoy some of the other ones more. Now, I want to know how you feel about L'Homme Idéal Parfum. Do you think this is a good one? Do you think it's a bad one? And if you compare it with the others, how do you feel this one stands out? And do you think this is the best L'Homme Idéal? Make sure you check out my L'Homme Idéal comparison over there, and make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.